This is the SETN Podcast with Chris Goforth and Chandler Morrison, covering high school football in Chattanooga and the Southeast Tennessee area. The SETN Podcast.
Welcome in. It's SETN Podcast. Chris Goforth, Chandler Morrison. Glad to be hanging out with you. We are finally here. We have made it to the end of the road. The end of the road being Finley Stadium and the Blue Cross Bowls that'll be taking place Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Chandler, look, I know we say it every year, but golly, and maybe it's because I'm getting old, but boy, does it fly by every year.
Yeah, you ain't kidding, Chris. I mean, it seems like we were, for us on Friday night, it seems like the season takes forever. Right, because there's so many scores, so many games. I'm on Twitter trying to be creative and whatnot. But then once you get past Friday night, the week zooms by, and all of a sudden you go from one Friday night and you're into the next Friday night already.
That's right.
I'm sure it's even shorter for you, because I know you do throughout the week. Sometimes you have broadcasts you have to prepare for and shows, and including this show, and then you do Friday night rivals. So I'm sure from week to week, you never feel like you have enough time to prepare for those broadcasts.
No, there's plenty of weeks when I could use another day, but look, it goes by so fast. Mm-hmm. You can find us on Twitter at SETN Preps. You can find Chandler at Sports Chandler. You can find me at Chris Goforth 1. Now, we will try not to flood your timeline with too many state championship pictures and tweets this week, but we are going to bring you some information from the state championship game. We'll keep you updated, especially on McCallie and South Pittsburg, because that's our two local teams that are playing. That's the two games we're going to be talking about today mostly. Now, I also got to let you know about this.
Ooh. We're
coming to you today on the podcast on a Wednesday. However, FYI,
you can't get enough.
Make plans, because Chandler and I will be live on Thursday night from the stadium,
Finley Stadium.
Prior to the McCallie game. We will go on the air at 5:00 Eastern time. That is 4:00 Central time. If you're a Facebooker, you will be able to watch it on the SETN Preps Facebook page. You will also be able to watch it on the WFLI Facebook page, because in addition to us being streaming live on the Bookface, we will also be live on WFLI. So for those that listen outside the Chattanooga area, it was the first time we've ever done this, but we conned the people into WFLI into letting us do this. So
how many Twinkies were exchanged in that deal?
Yeah, well, it was about 4 boxes and a half a pack of Little Debbie Christmas trees and
some moon pies, I'm sure,
and a couple of moon. That's right, because it's Chattanooga, so you got maybe an RC cola or two as well in a glass bottle, of course. But Chandler and I will be live not only on our Facebook page, not only on the WFLI Facebook page. We will be live on the radio starting at 5:00 Eastern time, 4:00 Central time on Thursday on WFLI. That is AM 1070. So pretty much if you are anywhere in Southeast Tennessee, you can listen to us on AM 1070 if you want to. Even, hey, you folks that, I know we got a handful up in Loudon that listen to this show, you're going to be able to hear us on 1070 because it's a boomer and it gets out there. Now, if you're local to Chattanooga, you can also listen in on 97.7 and also on 96.1 as well. So we'll be on both of those FM frequencies and on 1070 AM. So look, we just want you to tune in and join us. That will be what we're going to do Thursday. Is Chandler and I will talk a little bit about all the games. We'll have 1-2 games that will pretty much be in the books by the time that we get there. So we'll recap those games and we'll take a look ahead at the games coming up. and we'll deep dive into McCallie and South Pittsburg both, and talk a lot about those. We're going to see about a couple of special guests we want to have with us. We hope to know more about that coming up later on, but you're just going to have to tune in to hear those. We're not going to share that with you. That's going to come as a surprise. It may be a surprise to us, as a matter of fact.
Oftentimes stuff is a surprise to us on this podcast.
So again, check us out. We're excited about it. Again, it's the first time Chandler and I have been able to take SETN preps and be able to do something like this with it. So we're super excited about it. We hope you'll spend time with us. We're going to have fun out there, and appreciate, WFLI for working with us on it, and appreciate Tim Morgan with Chattanooga Sports for, making this thing happen and allowing us to be able to do this. So make sure that you like us on Facebook so you can watch our Facebook broadcast on Thursday as well. Subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We need a couple of ratings, by the way. We haven't gotten a new ratings in a while. We hadn't gotten a new review in a while. So if you're an Apple podcast person, we would appreciate your 5-star ratings. We would appreciate your reviews as well. We're also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Anchor.fm, YouTube, setnpreps.com. Chandler tells me we have an Instagram page. We are Instagram models, apparently. And supposedly we have TikTok. Now, I am a grown man, and I do not do TikTok because that's what my daughters, who are both teenagers, that's what they do. And that is a teenage thing and not a grown man thing.
Hey, it's growing. It's the next.
I understand.
Listen. With Facebook to Instagram.
I hear you. I know
it's going TikTok. That's the natural progression of all these things. And Chris, I got one more question here. Since I am an integral part to this broadcast, how many moon pies did you negotiate on my behalf?
4 of yours.
No, I'm talking about how many do I get when we get there? Like, how many's going to be sitting on the table? Like,
well, you're -4 at this point.
-4.
You're -4. I need you to go buy 4 so we can make this thing happen. That's kind of what needs to happen. No. We'll make sure that Chandler gets moon pies in order to. We don't want his sugar level to drop while we're doing this show, so we'll make sure we get that done on Thursday. Hey, you want to go ahead and hop in and talk about some of these games? Because I tell you, I am excited, Chandler.
I'm itching for it, man.
I'm excited about McCallie and NBA. I think this is going to be. We have followed McCallie. Look, we've been doing this podcast 4 years. I am not going to take credit for McCallie winning 2 state championships in the 4 years and playing for another one this year. So if they win, of the 4 years of this podcast, McCallie would have won 3 state championships. I mean, I'm not saying that we're responsible for it, but, I think we're bringing some luck to the Blue Tornado with this. They're running into a buzzsaw, though, in NBA. This is a team, Chandler, that has won 8 straight. You go back, all of the losses that NBA suffered was back early in the year, including a loss to McCallie. They were all close losses. Since that time, they have really turned it around, and they've done it against a really tough schedule. 8 out of the 10 teams they have played made the playoffs this year. 2 of those teams, McCallie and CPA, are playing for state championships. So, and if you'll remember, this is the team that McCallie beat for the state title 2 years ago. And they've got a quarterback.
Freshman, right?
Yes, Marcel Reed. He was the first freshman to ever start at quarterback for NBA ever.
Wow.
In their history.
Wow.
So McCallie beat them 2 years ago. Reed's dad, by the way, Marcel Reed, he's the quarterback at NBA. His dad was the head coach at Tennessee State. He is a 4-star prospect. He's got offers from Georgia, from Tennessee, from some others. He's thrown for 1,380 yards this season. He's rushed for another 537 and 24 total touchdowns. They've got a running back in Rhett Hales, who has rushed for 1,305 yards and scored 13 more touchdowns. And over this 8-game winning streak, their defense has been holding opponents to just 11 points per game. McCallie's going to score more than 11 points against them. I feel pretty confident in that. But I think the pressure will be McCallie won that game 2 years ago against MBA for the state championship behind the play of their defense. If you remember, James Howard was a one-man wrecking crew that night for McCallie as a sophomore. He pretty much dominated that game when he was on the field, and he made life miserable that night for Marcel Reed. I think the pressure is going to be on the McCallie defense to come up, get stops, come up with a couple of turnovers, make life miserable for Marcel Reed. That's going to start up front. I think James Howard needs to have another big game along that defensive line. I think he's the best defensive lineman in our area. I just like that kid. I like how he plays. He's got a mean streak in him. I like that about him. But they need him to come up and play big on Friday night to give them another chance at going for 3 straight state championships. Do not make the mistake of thinking this is going to be one of those games that McCallie can just roll the football out there and that, NBA is just going to fold up and roll into the fetal position on them and allow McCallie to run all over them. That's not going to happen. This NBA team's coming to fight.
Yeah, and Chris, the first thing I think about when I see this matchup is they played earlier this season, and McCallie struggled for most of that game. They finally came back and won it, I think, on the last drive there of the game. They won 34-31. And I think, man, we talk about, can you beat someone twice? Now, we talk about that usually in the quarterfinals and semifinals, and we don't talk about it in the championship too much. Can you beat somebody twice?
Well, it doesn't happen.
Division
honestly,
2 AAA is the only place. Maybe Division 2 single A, double A.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah.
That's just, you just don't see a rematch in a state championship game from a game that was played earlier in the year.
Yeah.
This is kind of rare. I mean, I guess it happens a lot probably in the Division 2 ranks.
Yes.
But in the public schools, we rare to never see this.
Yeah, because I mean, you can have schools from the same region in opposite ends of the bracket, because of how it's set up. So, like, I'm not saying that's odd. What I'm saying is we don't see that. We don't talk about that because it doesn't ever happen. I wonder how much being in the state championship affects that second matchup if you're NBA. I wonder
what advantage does McCallie have, having been here and won it the last 2 years, including beating MBA 2 years ago. How much of an advantage is that going to be for McCallie going into this, just from the standpoint that, hey, we've been here and done this before?
And I'm not going to bring in the travel to this. I'm not going to on this McCallie game. Maybe when we go to Class 1A.
Travel, look, these guys are young.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not bringing that into this
because
because
they're young.
They're young, 1 and 2. With Division 2 AAA, they travel all over the state anyway. I mean, they could travel from mountains. They could travel from Mountain City to Memphis in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, that's just how it's set up. So, that's why I say I don't want to bring travel into this, because that's not a factor. They're used to traveling. I mean, heck, most of these teams in Division 2 AAA, they travel out of state for 1 game a year at least. McCallie does it. I think they did it last year like 3 times because of COVID and all this other stuff, or they had someone travel from out of state. So that's not really a factor in this, as much as we like to say this is the McCallie Invitational. This is, does it feel a little better to wake up and be able to drive over to the stadium, or meet the team over at the stadium? It does. In a stadium you've played in multiple times, probably, if you're a junior or senior for McCallie, because last year they played Baylor in Findlay. I think this year they played
Calhoun there.
Calhoun there last year. So you're
Jamboree's there every year.
Jamboree's there every year. You start your season, you end your season. So to me, I look at this matchup and I think, man, it's not really a factor. And it should, it feels like it should be, but it's not really a factor that McCallie is a virtual home. It's the virtual home game for McCallie. It's not as much as a factor as if Georgia's playing in the SEC championship against Alabama, right? Like, that's a little bit more of a factor because you have the Georgia people there in Atlanta. You don't have that factor as McCallie, because here's the thing, Chris. we can talk about this as much as we want, and maybe Division II, AAA, maybe it's because it's on Thursday. They didn't fill up the stands for – when's the last time they filled up the stands at not just Findlay, but in Cookeville? I mean, it takes a lot to fill up those stands because they are big, and Findlay Stadium is much bigger than the Cookeville Stadium. And I know I'm kind of getting into fans and all this stuff, other stuff. This is not a slight against the fans. It's just these stadiums are so big. They're not high school stadiums, you know. So that's one thing I see too is McCallie's not going to have a virtual home field advantage because of that. Now, you get into the technicals of this game. I think McCallie has to play perfect football. I don't think they can afford – a fumble in this game could be what cost them a state championship. I really do believe that because these teams are so, you know, neck and neck. I think that McCallie and NBA, whoever makes the first mistake is probably going to lose this game. I think both these teams are going to come in. They're used to having great games. They don't make mistakes. They're probably going to come in. And it may be the third quarter, maybe the fourth quarter, maybe the second quarter. I don't know when that happens. I think whoever makes the first mistake is what loses this game. Whoever makes that turnover, whether it's a pick six or it's just a fumble that ends up turning into a score, I think whoever makes that first mistake is the one that loses this ball game because these teams are so neck and neck. And I think McCallie in the past few weeks, they've had such a margin for error. I mean, heck, they had such a margin for error in Father Ryan. How many turnovers did they have in that game, Chris?
Too many.
Too many.
Four, I think. Wasn't it four turnovers?
Imagine telling Ralph Potter you're going to have 4 turnovers and still win this game. I'm sure he's not happy about the turnovers, but he's like, I can't ask for much more, you know? So there's not going to be a 4 turnover margin. There's probably not even going to be a 1 turnover margin of, you know, what you're going to see in this game. It's going to have to be McCallie going straight forward and saying, listen, we can't make any mistakes, not just small, big. We can't make any mistakes. There's no margin for error in this game. And that's what I see from a technical standpoint in this game. I think that McCallie defense has to be able to hold up against both sides of the attack. I think sometimes when teams against McCallie this year, when teams have been able to run and pass on offense, that's when McCallie – they've not really struggled on defense this year, but that's when they've had the struggles they have, is when teams are balanced. And that of course, that's across the board something you see. But I think for McCallie, it's even more so because they're such a balanced offense that when their defense sees a balanced offense, it's kind of hard to defend because it's usually a different kind of offense that's balanced, right? Maybe it's the power running game mixed in with the long pass. I don't know. But I think that defense has got to be ready for a more balanced attack than they've seen the past few weeks. They can't really key in on one thing because, like you said, you got multiple athletes across the field, and that's Division II AAA, but even more so with NBA. I mean, they made it to a state championship. They've got athletes. You don't make it to a championship in Division II AAA without, you know, D1 athletes across the board. We see that with McCallie. We see that with NBA. So that's how I think this game has to go for McCallie. You have to keep from making big mistakes early, and that defense has to hold up against a more balanced attack than you're used to seeing.
Let's go to our next game and our only other game involving a local team. That's South Pittsburg as the Pirates take on McKenzie. McKenzie's coming into this game. They got a running back that is really special. He's probably the best running back in 1A football. He's got offers from Tennessee and Kentucky. He can fly. I mean, this kid, Taylor, I think is his last name, and he is a legit 4.40 kind of guy. He can move. South Pittsburgh's going to have their hands full in this. Let's put this into a little bit of perspective here about McKenzie. They have beaten Fayetteville and Peabody in consecutive weeks. That is your defending 1A and defending 2A state champions that they have now beaten in consecutive weeks. So do not sleep on McKenzie. South Pittsburgh's played them before for a state championship, and I believe the Pirates beat them a couple of years ago when they played.
Too.
So look, what a story for South Pittsburg to go through everything these guys went through with your coach leaving after one game. And,
Yeah.
you go through the COVID shutdown that Marion County schools had to deal with. I think West Stone and Heath Grider deserve a ton of credit for the job they have done in basically keeping it between the ditches at South Pittsburg. They knew they had a good football team. They knew they had good athletes coming into this. Just get out of the way and let those guys, put those kids in position to be able to succeed. And I think that's what they've done as coaches, is maximize the talent they have. I think those two guys have done a heck of a year. Let me tell you, if South Pittsburg wins this game on Friday afternoon, those two guys ought to be, if they aren't the Times Free Press's co-head coaches of the year for what they did, for what they've accomplished at South Pittsburg, given the adversity those two guys have had to deal with, then somebody missed something somewhere, because I think those two guys have done a remarkable job. Now, let's talk about this game. We talked about the running back at McKenzie and how good he is. I think the pressure is going to be on the South Pittsburg defense. I think the Pirates are going to be able to score points in this game. I think it comes down to how many stops can their defense get, how many turnovers can their defense possibly force. Geo Davis is back. He was slowed, Chandler, early in the year with an ankle injury. They've been able to get Geo Davis back. He's playing like a grown man, which is what he is, and he's playing like that. Now, the other factor for them is going to, especially on offense, is going to be the Hunter twins, Richard and Reginald Hunter. Those guys have had really, really good playoffs so far. But for me, this is going to come down to Geo Davis and that defensive line and how well they play up front for South Pittsburg. That's going to determine how well this game goes. Frankly, I think that may, and I realize that's a kind of a cliched thing to say, but I really feel like in this game, if South Pittsburg blocks on offense, gets some penetration on defense, if they can win that line of scrimmage, South Pittsburg will win this game. Where they will lose it is if McKenzie gets a good push and is able to push the South Pittsburg offense back, or they're able to get the push against the South Pittsburg defensive line and push those guys back. I really think this game's going to be won and lost up front.
First thing is, Chris, 2007, South Pittsburgh played McKenzie. They won 52-20. So you were right there. I just didn't know what the score was. That
was a beatdown.
Yeah, that was a beatdown. Chris, the second thing here is you kind of glossed over the fact. I mean, you didn't really gloss over it, but the fact that Peabody is not going to be at Finley Stadium Friday afternoon, that's probably the most shocking result in the past 2 or 3 weeks I have seen. Semifinals and whatever. That's probably the most shocking result I have seen, because McKenzie got shattered out. I don't think anybody expected McKenzie to be able to go through that gauntlet of first Fayetteville, second Peabody, and be able to make it to the state championship game. That changes the dynamic of this thing completely, because we go into this thinking Peabody is just the GOAT right now because they were the 2A champ last year. You go in here and you think, well, were they really that good? Were they really down? Was Fayetteville down too? Or is McKenzie just that good and should be even more scary that you're having to face them at Finley? So to me, that's how I see this game. I don't know how close this game is, Chris. And that's the crazy thing about these state championship games. Outside of Division II, where teams play each other from across the state, it's very hard to kind of get a grip on who you're playing and how good they actually are. And I know that's a kind of a cliche thing to say about these state championships, but for me, I think if you're South Pittsburgh, you come in with your shoulders just a little bit higher, because I'm sure everybody has told you all year just how good Peabody is and how they're going to thump you when they get the chance. They don't have Peabody. They have McKenzie. And maybe that puts a little life in you. Maybe that scares the tar out of you. I don't know what the effect is on South Pittsburg, but to me, that was the most unexpected result. Now, let's talk about this game from a technical aspect, whatever I was trying to say there. Let's talk about that, because I think that, I think you're right in this. I think that this McKenzie defense, if they get a push on the South Pittsburg offense, and especially the South Pittsburg offensive line, I think it's going to be trouble all game long, because South Pittsburg is not a team that, we've seen in years past where they've been able to kind of improvise, go outside, do this. They kind of have to go by the script a little bit more, because it's been more dependent, like you said, on the players this year. They've had to kind of follow the script of not necessarily play by play, like, oh, we're going to run play A, B, C, D in that order. But, we run this play. There's not a lot of room for improvisation, because we've had to, kind of, maybe they probably had to simplify that offense a little bit, because I'm sure there are things that, when Jones was there that he was trying to do and these coaches were trying to do, but now that he's gone, the other coaches want to try to do something different, try to do something in line with what South Pittsburgh's doing. So for me, I think if you're South Pittsburgh, it's about getting that first touchdown. If you can get that first touchdown, I think South Pittsburgh will make a game out of this, and this game will go deep, deep into the fourth quarter, if not to the final play. If they don't get that first touchdown, I think McKenzie smells blood, and that 52-20 thing we were talking about in 2007, I think that gets flipped if McKenzie smells blood, because if McKenzie kind of gets backed up a little bit on their offense, if you can say, all right, I'm South Pittsburgh, I'm going to go down the field, I'm going to score a touchdown, that right there is a game changer to me at the beginning of that game, because that's saying, we don't care that you're McKenzie, we don't care who you beat, you're playing South Pittsburgh now. So that is, for me, what I think South Pittsburgh has to go on. They have to force their will early in that game, or this could be, for lack of a better term, a bloodbath once McKenzie smells blood. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think this could, because here's the thing, this is not the strongest South Pittsburgh team we've ever seen. This is a great story. Okay, don't get me wrong. This is a fantastic story.
You're right.
This is the most adverse South Pittsburgh team I think I've ever seen, because usually we talk about South Pittsburgh, the most adversity they see is being up by a touchdown or two at halftime of their semifinal game. So, that's kind of what we see. I look at this and I think, man, this is not the strongest South Pittsburgh team. This is probably one of the weaker South Pittsburgh teams I've ever seen in the state championship. I don't mean that to take down this team. I'm just saying in years past, it feels like there's been a more dominant presence on that team some way, somehow. So to me, Chris, like I said, I think if McKenzie smells blood early, they're going to pounce. And if McKenzie pounces, I think this game is over by the second quarter.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally see what you're saying.
Yeah.
While
I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I agree that I hope it doesn't happen. But look, you can't sleep on this McKenzie team. I think they are. Look, this is a team that can give you problems. So you got to know what's coming. So with that being said, I guess we're done. I mean, we only got two games. We only got two games to talk about. So we've done our two games. So I guess it's time for us to get out of here. I want to remind folks one more time that you can find us on Facebook, on our SETN Preps Facebook page. We'll also be on the WFLI Radio Facebook page. So that will be Thursday night starting at 5 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Central time. So we would love to have you come and join us. And Chandler and I will be talking we're going to talk a little bit about all of these games. And I want to say this too. If you listen to this podcast, you're a big high school football fan. Nobody that's listening to this podcast is a fair weather fan. Nobody listening to this podcast is a casual fan of high school football. You're hardcore, and you are the people that we need to see out at Finley Stadium this weekend. I don't care which game you come to, but we need folks to get out there and buy tickets and support this event. Let's get Chandler mentioned earlier about the attendance in the past. We need to make sure that we blow every attendance record out of the water for this while we've got it here in Chattanooga. So get out. The tickets aren't that expensive, for crying out loud.
$10 a day. You get 3 games for $10, right?
It's not going to cost you that much to park. It's not going to cost you that much to go downtown to eat after the games are over. So for goodness gracious, get out there and support your teams. Look, I don't care if you don't want to go watch McCallie or South Pittsburg. Fine. Find another game that you want to go check out. Just get out there and support high school football, and let's make this thing a huge, huge success for the city of Chattanooga.
We'd love to be out there doing radio every single year for this event in Chattanooga. I mean,
I ain't driving to Cookeville to do this.
No, and listen, I don't know what the future of this is, Chris. I don't know if this is something they start a rotation on or try to do something about that nature just to kind of move it around, but I hope it stays in Chattanooga for a while. Or at least Chattanooga starts to be on the rotation of wherever they want to move it to. Because I think Chattanooga, like we've said, we weren't shocked when we saw, hey, it's coming to Chattanooga, because we knew that was, I mean, we were all shocked that it went away from Cookeville. We weren't shocked to see that it ended up in Chattanooga, because Chattanooga is a fantastic place. And everybody that listens to this podcast that follows high school football knows just how special a place it is for high school football and how seriously they take it. So I'm ecstatic it's in Chattanooga, Chris. I have to work a little bit more, so I can't really get out to the games as much as I want to. I'm getting to go out to some of them, but golly, Chris, if you're in this area, you're not going to at least 1 or 2 games this weekend. What are you doing?
Yeah. Get out and support this thing. And again, Chandler and I hope you'll join us on Facebook and live on air on WFLI Thursday. Again, we start at 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central Time. You can watch it on Facebook. You can also find us on AM 1070, 97.7, and 96.1 WFLI. It's going to do it for us. You guys enjoy it. We'll look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. We'll talk about all these state championship games and get you caught up on what else is going on in high school football. Chandler, enjoyed it as always. I'll see you on Thursday.
Sounds good.
This is the SETN Podcast with Chris Goforth and Chandler Morrison, covering high school football in Chattanooga and the Southeast Tennessee area. The SETN Podcast.